My son scheduled the neurologist. My son drove me to every appointment. My son sat in the chair beside me and wrote things down in a small leather notebook he had bought just for this. And 4 months later, my son slid a folder across my own kitchen table and told me, very gently, that it was time to talk about what came next. He used the word safety. He used the word burden. He used the word memory care twice. He did not know that the doctor he had chosen for me had already called me from a personal email the night after our very first visit. He did not know what the doctor's last name used to be. I am Helen. I am 70 years old. I spent 41 years inside the same bank, on the same corner, in the same small town, and I retired as the branch manager because I could read a balance sheet faster than the people who trained me. I tell you that not to brag. I tell you that because it matters later, when my son tries to convince a courtroom that I cannot remember my own address. It started in April of last year. A Tuesday morning, I was making coffee, the same way I have made coffee since my husband died 9 years ago. 1 scoop, then another, then a half scoop for the pot. My son Trevor was sitting at my kitchen table with his laptop open, the way he had started doing on weekends, and he watched me pour the water. Then he said, very softly, "Mom, that is the 3rd time you have made coffee this morning." I had not made coffee 3 times. I had made it once. The pot was still empty when he said it. I looked at the pot, and I looked at him, and I laughed a little, because I thought he was teasing me. He did not laugh back. He just wrote something in that little leather notebook. That was the first one. I want you to understand that. The very first one. A pot of coffee that did not exist, written down in a notebook I had not yet learned to be afraid of. After that, the small things started arriving in a steady, quiet line. He would call me on a Wednesday and ask if I remembered that we had spoken on Tuesday, when we had not spoken on Tuesday. He would mention a doctor's appointment I had supposedly forgotten, an appointment I had never been told about. He would stop by unannounced and find me reading in my chair, and he would tilt his head and ask if I had eaten yet, in the same voice you use with a child who has been quiet too long. I want to tell you that I caught it right away. I did not. For about 3 weeks, I believed him. That is the part I am most ashamed of. I am a woman who balanced commercial loan portfolios in my sleep, and for 3 weeks, I stood in my own kitchen wondering if I had really made coffee twice. The neurologist appointment came in late May. Trevor said he had done research. He said he had found the best man in the county. He said his name was Dr. Alan Whitfield, and the office was 40 minutes away, in a building I had never been to, on a street I did not know. Trevor drove. Trevor parked. Trevor walked me in. Trevor sat in the chair beside mine and answered most of the questions before I could open my mouth. Dr. Whitfield was a tall, quiet man, maybe 45, with very still hands. He asked me to draw a clock. He asked me to remember 3 words. He asked me what year it was and what season and who the president was. I answered everything. I watched his face the whole time. He did not look at Trevor when Trevor interrupted to correct one of my answers, which had not actually been wrong. He just wrote and nodded, and at the end he shook my hand and held it 1 second longer than a stranger would. That night, at 11:17, an email arrived in my personal inbox, not the one Trevor had set up for me, the old one. From a private address I did not recognize. The subject line was only my late sister's name, Margaret. I want you to sit with that for a moment. My sister Margaret died in 2004. Nobody had written her name to me in years. I opened the email with my reading glasses halfway down my nose and my heart doing something it had not done in a long time. The message was short. It said, "Aunt Helen, I do not know if you remember me. I am Margaret's son. I saw the family name on the intake form today, and I had to write to you privately before I do anything else. Something is not right about your appointment. Please call me at this number from a phone your son does not have access to. Alan." I read it 4 times. Then I read it a 5th, my nephew, my sister's boy. The last time I had seen Alan, he had been a thin teenager at his mother's funeral, standing behind his father in a suit that was too big in the shoulders. He had grown up. He had become a doctor. He had taken his stepfather's last name, Whitfield, which is why Trevor had not flinched when he read it. I drove to a gas station the next morning. I used the payphone outside the bathrooms because I am old enough to know that payphones still exist if you look for them. Alan picked up on the second ring. He said, "Aunt Helen, your son is building a case. I do not know what kind yet, but he is building one, and I am going to help you." That was the moment my life split in half. There was the life Trevor thought I was living, and there was the life I actually started living very quietly, beginning that morning at a gas station payphone with my hand shaking around the receiver. Here is what Alan and I did. He scheduled me, under my maiden name, with a colleague at a hospital 2 counties over, a full independent neuropsychological evaluation, 6 hours of testing across 2 days. I drove myself. I paid in cash. I told Trevor I was going to a quilting retreat, and he was so pleased with himself for not questioning it that he actually patted my arm and said it was good for me to get out. The results came back 10 days later. I scored in the 98th percentile for my age group. Memory, executive function, language, everything. The neurologist wrote in her own hand at the bottom of the report, "This patient shows no evidence of any cognitive impairment of any kind. None." I put that report in a file folder. I put the file folder in a fireproof box. I put the box in the back of my closet behind a winter coat I had not worn in 3 years. And then I went back to letting my son think he was winning. You have to understand something. I could have stopped him in June. I could have walked into his house with the real report and ended it. I did not. I wanted to know how far he would go. I wanted to see the whole shape of it before I touched it, so I made small mistakes on purpose. I left the stove on once while he was visiting with nothing in the pan. I called him by his cousin's name and corrected myself a beat too late. I asked him, in front of his wife, what month it was, and then I laughed at myself the way a frightened old woman would laugh. His wife looked at the floor. Trevor wrote in his notebook. The cruelest part was not the notebook. The cruelest part was the kindness. He started bringing me soup. He started calling me sweetheart, which he had not called me since he was 9. One Sunday in July, he came over with a small bouquet of yellow daisies and put them in a jar on my kitchen window, and he kissed the top of my head. And for about 4 minutes, I forgot what he was doing to me. And I just stood there in my kitchen with my son's hand on my shoulder and the smell of daisies in the air, and I almost cried. That is the part I cannot tell anyone in my real life. That for 4 minutes, I let myself believe he loved me. Then he opened his laptop on my table and asked me, very gently, if we could talk about simplifying my checking account. The joint account paperwork came in August. The guardianship paperwork came in September. He brought it over on a Saturday in a folder the color of a manila envelope, and he laid it on the table next to a plate of cold pancakes he had picked up from a diner on his way. He said, "Mom, this is just so I can help you." He said, "Mom, this is what Dad would have wanted." He said, "Mom, the memory care facility I toured has a garden. You would love the garden." I looked at the pancakes. They were the kind my husband used to make badly on Sunday mornings with too much syrup and the edges burned. Trevor did not remember that. Trevor had bought them because they were the cheapest thing on the menu. I signed nothing. I told him I needed to read it. I told him I needed a few weeks. He smiled at me the way you smile at a dog that has finally sat down. He said, "Of course, Mom. Take your time." He filed the guardianship petition anyway, 3 days later, without telling me. I found out because Alan found out, because the court system in our state lists these things, and Alan had been watching. I hired my own lawyer the next morning, a woman named Patricia, 62, who had handled my husband's estate. I gave her the real evaluation. I gave her the email from Alan. I gave her copies of every text Trevor had sent me for 6 months, including the ones where he told his sister, in a group thread he had accidentally included me on, that Mom was slipping faster than expected and the house would be on the market by spring. The hearing was in October. It lasted 20 minutes. Trevor walked in with his lawyer and his notebook and a printout of Dr. Whitfield's notes, which, it turned out, said nothing about dementia. They said only that further evaluation was warranted. Alan had been very careful about that. My lawyer entered the independent evaluation into evidence. She entered the text messages. She entered a sworn statement from Alan explaining that he had recognized me as his aunt and had referred me for independent testing for that reason, in writing, the same day. The judge read for about 6 minutes. He did not look at me. He looked at Trevor. He asked Trevor one question. He asked, "Sir, were you aware that Dr. Whitfield is your mother's nephew?" Trevor said he was not. The judge said, "He is. He has been her nephew the entire time you have been driving her to his office." The judge dismissed the petition. He ordered Trevor to pay my legal fees, every dollar, within 90 days. He told Trevor, on the record, that he had come very close to a referral for elder financial abuse, and that the only reason he was not making that referral today was that my lawyer had not requested it. He looked at me then, for the first time, and he asked if I wanted to add anything. I said, "No, Your Honor. Thank you." That was all I said in the entire hearing. Trevor did not look at me when he left. He looked at his shoes. His lawyer touched his elbow the way you touch someone at a funeral. I have not spoken to him since April of this year, when he sent me one email asking if we could, in his words, move past this. I did not answer. There is nothing to move past. There is only what he did, sitting in a folder in a fireproof box in the back of my closet, behind a coat I still do not wear. The yellow daisies died a long time ago. I threw out the jar. I bought a new one at a thrift store for $2, and I keep it on the same windowsill, empty, because I like the way the light comes through it in the afternoon. I make coffee every morning. 1 scoop, then another, then a half scoop. I drink it black at my own kitchen table, in the house my husband and I bought in 1978. I sleep alone, in my own bed, under a quilt my mother made me the year I got married. I am 70 years old. I am sharp as a tack. I remember everything. I remember the notebook. I remember the pancakes. I remember the 4 minutes in July when I almost believed him. That one is the hardest. That one comes back at strange times, when I am folding laundry or rinsing a cup, and I have to put the cup down and stand very still until it passes. People keep asking me if I forgive him. They ask it gently, the way you ask about the weather at a funeral. I tell them the truth. I tell them I do not think about him often enough to forgive him. I tell them my days are quiet now, and my mornings are mine, and my mind is mine, and that is enough. But sometimes, late, when the house is very still, I think about that little leather notebook. I wonder where he keeps it now. I wonder if he ever opens it. I wonder if he reads what he wrote about me in his own handwriting and understands what it says about him. I hope he does. I hope he reads it every night. I hope he remembers the way he wanted everyone to believe I could not.